Despite the heavens opening, the fires being doused and high hopes that this might be a drought-breaking turn in the weather, climate is once again the hot-button issue in Canberra today. The Greens wanted a climate emergency declared last month because of drought and fires. Today they got up in Parliament demanding a climate emergency because of rains and floods. These people can never be silenced by facts or reality, and politically they can never be satisfied. Green Left Independent Zali Steggall is pushing a new private members bill for additional climate change action. I don't think it'll include wind turbines at Manly, and I don't think the power price increases it'd lead to would create too many budget strains at Mosman. Still, various MPs within the coalition are busy arguing about climate policy, mainly because those that hold wealthy inner-city seats want a virtue signal on climate change in the Sydney Morning Herald, The Age or on the ABC. So MPs like Trent Zimmerman are now talking about targets beyond Paris, which is a decade away as it is. They're talking about zero net emissions in Australia for 20 years after Paris. Seriously.
I think having that commitment to reach the Paris Agreement commitments we've already made to see the world reach a net zero carbon emission status in the next half of this century, it is something that we need to consider as part of that.
Other MPs, such as former Resources Minister Matt Canavan, are still pushing to bolster our energy supplies by urging government help to get a new coal-fired power station underway. And right on cue, Malcolm Turnbull, who was in town for the Indonesian president's visit, called this crazy.
People who are advocating that the government should fund coal-fired power are basically making a case for higher emissions and higher energy prices, and that is nuts.
Well, kinda, sort of. I don't like government subsidising private investments at all, but what about renewables? All the renewable energy in our system now is subsidised. Virtually none of it would have been in place without government subsidies. So while Turnbull and his supporters think coal should stand or fall on its merits, they favour subsidies for renewables. What's worse is they've tipped an unknown amount of taxpayers' money, possibly up to $4 billion, to build the Snowy 2.0 scheme. It won't produce any additional electricity, just store it for when we need it. So some consistency would be pretty useful here. Cut out all subsidies and see how the energy market shapes up then. Also, the estimates for renewables costs over time only factor in 2 to 6 hours storage. How could this country or any other exist on just 2 to 6 hours storage for wind or solar power? We'd be left without power generation regularly unless there's reliable gas-fired power, a hell of a lot more stored hydro perhaps, pumped hydro, or dare I say it, coal-fired generation to rely on. You have to remind yourself every now and then that we've created all this uncertainty, doubled the cost of our power, shed thousands of jobs and caused enormous political difficulties through our renewable policies and our emissions reductions goals. All for what? All to stand back and watch global emissions rise dramatically. In other words, all for no environmental gain. And they want us to do more at whatever cost. For nothing but gesture politics. Hard to believe we're at this place again, and it does destabilise the coalition. It was not directly to blame for the latest embarrassment, but climate and energy politics were in the mix when Nationals MP Lou O'Brien was dissatisfied with the party's leadership outcome. He's a Barnaby Joyce supporter, and he moved to the crossbench today. Labor then saw their chance and nominated him for the Deputy Speaker's job, and O'Brien won the cushy gig, defeating his own government's nomination, the choice of his own party's leader. In other words, the government lost a vote in the House over the Deputy Speaker. There is mischief afoot, and the Nationals are creating an ugly episode of coalition instability, cruelling the start to the parliamentary year for the government.